I'm Chaplain Jacob Scott of the Oregon National Guard. This is the Hope in the Trenches podcast. Where going forward, I'll sit down for conversations with people who offer interesting and informative perspectives on finding strength for life and work in the trenches, and even improving our spiritual posture. Whether you feel like you're under heavy bombardment or ready to go over the top toward a new objective, it's good to be with you. Our guests today are Sergeant Eamon O'Reilly and Radar, a K-9 team and supervisor in the patrol division with the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Eamon's been married to his wife, Lisa, for 28 years, and they have 4 fantastic children. He was first hired by the jail division in 2004 before joining the patrol division in 2008. He's been a member of the Washington County Interagency SWAT team, or TNT, the Tactical Negotiations Team, since 2012. Sergeant O'Reilly is the 99th person to pass probation and become a member of the team since it was founded in 1976. He promoted to corporal in 2014, followed by sergeant in 2016. He joined the K-9 team in 2015 and was paired with Radar, a Belgian Malinois, when Radar was 1 year old. And Radar just turned 10 on New Year's Eve. And I should have asked, too, in the military, the dog is 1 grade higher than the handler. They do that in police work, too?
We don't give dogs ranks, no.
Okay. So recently, Sergeant O'Reilly and Radar exploded in popularity on social media as their short videos that are released almost daily show them sharing and rating a snack in the cruiser. You guys do such an incredible job making people smile and bringing some positivity. So we'll talk about that in a bit. My co-host today is Chaplain Shane Yates, our deputy state chaplain here in Oregon. This is his 3rd time on Hope in the Trenches. Shane became a chaplain in 2007 after a career in law enforcement. He has held a variety of assignments as a chaplain, including with the CAV, infantry, field artillery, engineers, and aviation at battalion and brigade level, and now alongside me here at Joint Force Headquarters. Shane's deployed to Baghdad, Iraq, and Kabul, Afghanistan. And on the civilian side, Shane is CEO and co-founder of Task Force Heroes Ministries, serving first responders and veterans nationwide by providing spiritual resiliency and hope as they face the dangers and trauma of their frontline careers. Shane and his wife, Karen, have been married for 30 years. They have 5 children and multiple grandchildren. And 2 of his sons have served in the military, and 1 son and a daughter currently serve in law enforcement as well. Our producer is First Sergeant Zach Holden, a public affairs specialist for the Oregon Guard, and our 115th Mobile Public Affairs Detachment. Eamon and Shane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Yeah. So, Eamon, you shared with us that you're a Navy brat. So,
Yeah.
how did you grow up, and when did you become interested in serving in law enforcement?
So my dad served 20 years. He retired a commander.
Okay.
And as an officer, he basically got to choose a lot of the places we moved. We still moved every 2 or 3 years, but we stayed in California the whole time. Okay. So I just moved up and down the coast of California, Oxnard, Monterey, San Diego, and then he retired in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So that's where I was most of my junior high school life. Not always on bases. That was the only base I lived on, Hamilton Air Force Base.
Okay.
That was decommissioned Air Force Base at the time, but still housing for current military. So we lived there, grew up there, and my experience with military kids is there's 2 kinds of military kids. There's the kids who grow up wearing their dad's fatigues and playing Army. And then there's me and my buddies who were we skateboard and wanted nothing to do with the military, and now I actually regret, because I think I would have had a good time. I think I would have been successful and enjoyed any of the services, any of the branches, but wanted nothing to do with it when it was time to make the decision. And I actually also wanted nothing to do with law enforcement. Not that I wasn't trying to avoid it, but it just wasn't on my mind.
Sure.
I was basically in the restaurant industry for most of my young adult life, making minimum wage and barely scraping by. And my dad, who had been working for the government, continued to work for the government when he retired, mostly city governments. He was an accountant. And so he was looking for a job for me and sent me a message, told me that Washington County, where I was living at the time, we moved up here. My wife and I moved up here when we got married. Moved up to Oregon in 95 just to get away from California. We couldn't afford it, really.
Yeah.
And so he sent me a message and said that Washington County was hiring dispatchers. And I thought that sounded terrible. That sounded like an awful job. But it took me to the website that showed me that they were hiring police officers as well. And I still remember to this day, we were living in a townhome with 2 stories, and I walked down the stairs, and I got halfway down the stairway, and my wife was watching TV, back was to me on the couch, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about me being a cop?" And I expected her to turn around and laugh, but I think she was so frustrated with me not having a career at the time that I could have said anything, and she would have encouraged me to do it. And she turned around and she said, "Yeah, that sounds great. You should do that." And so I said, "Okay." And I applied, and I started working for Washington County Sheriff's Office in the jail in corrections. So I had no aspirations for law enforcement. I hadn't even been in the jail yet when I got hired to work in the jail. So absolutely zero aspirations for working in law enforcement.
So do you or your wife have any family members in law enforcement?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's a brand new world.
It was a brand new world for us both. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a big commitment. Did your wife understand the commitment that she was making?
No, neither of us. Neither of us understood the commitment. Like I said, we were living paycheck to paycheck, and I could have said anything, and she would have supported me.
Yeah.
So, and she's supported me since, but it was definitely it was a new adventure for both of us.
Okay. Well, and then did you have dogs growing up, or when did canine become an option for you?
It's a very similar story in that I didn't have any aspirations in becoming a canine handler. We had a dog when I was a kid, but it was, I don't even know if I would consider it a dog. It was this little tiny thing. It was a Pekingese poodle, little white thing named Chester that I didn't care about it. He was just a little dog. It just happened to live in the house that I lived in. And my wife and I didn't have any dogs. I actually didn't like dogs. I wasn't a fan of dogs. I wasn't a fan of animals in general, but I definitely was not a fan of dogs. But I liked problem solving, and I liked puzzles, and I loved to see the canine team use their dogs to solve problems. And so initially, I just went to work with the team because I thought, who better than to have a dog bite than a guy who doesn't care for dogs and dogs don't like. Because I just thought dogs didn't like me, but it was really, a relationship where they could understand that I wasn't comfortable around them. And so I thought, well, what better person to go hide from the dogs and get in the dog suit than a guy that doesn't like dogs? So I went to help the team, which now I tell people all the time, if you want to be on the canine team, that's the best way to get in there, is just to get to meet the team and understand how they work with the dogs. And so by nature of just going to help them out, I started to really become interested in what they were doing with the dogs. And so when a position opened up, I applied for it and got the position, still thinking that it was just a tool. It was just a thing that was going to be in my car that I was going to be able to get out and use to solve problems with.
So now, are you like a checklist guy or a routine type person? Because that's a big deal with, military law enforcement in general, but when you're training a canine, that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, routine is important, checklist is important. I think one of the more important things that I've learned since being on the canine, because I've been on the team for 9 years now. Radar's been the only dog that I trained personally, but in that 9 years, and then moving into the supervision of the team, I've had the opportunity to help train all of the dogs on my team, as well as we train with everyone from the whole state. Twice a year we get together to train. And so I've had opportunities to train with other dogs. So routine is really important, but what's more important is being able to think outside of the box and be able to think in terms of just to be creative is pretty important. But I am a routine. I'm very big on routine.
Yeah.
And dogs like routine, right? I mean, a dog loves a routine. They get used to it. They learn. I think they learn better. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, and I shared with you in 2015 when we were in Afghanistan, I had a dog who had been trained to be a service dog, but some would say remissioned to come with us as a therapy dog, and he had learned in training over 90 different commands, and so quite frequently I learned when he wasn't doing what I wanted him to do, it was because I was not giving him the commands correctly or in a way that he understood, or putting him in a position to be successful.
Yeah, we've learned that dogs are actually much more smarter than we think they are, and some breeds more than others.
Sure.
But they're much smarter than we think than they are. And the game or the process that we've learned is it's not that the dog can't understand what we're trying to say. It's just how do we communicate that in their language? Because we can't use people think that dogs speak English or dogs speak German, but all they're doing is they're hearing tones and they're hearing
fluctuations.
Correct. And so they're not understanding the language. So when I'm trying to teach a dog how to do something, I have to figure out how do I get the idea in my head to become the same idea in the dog's head.
Right.
And so that's one of the puzzles that I enjoy doing.
Right.
Yeah, and reinforce that the stimulus and response.
Yes.
Right. So, but it sounds like you learned something about that human-animal connection too, right? I mean, I've had more than one veteran tell me that their dog saved their life when they were at a particularly dark time. And we were talking about this before we started recording. When we were in Afghanistan and Finnegan was there with me, I had several people tell me that they missed their dogs more than most people that were back in the States. So tell me about that bond then that's developed with Radar.
Yeah, so the bond evolved because, like I said, when I first got him, he was just a tool that I thought was going to go in the back of my car, and I was going to get him out when I needed him, and I was going to put him away when I didn't need him, and that's really did start that way.
Yeah,
that's how it started, and it was a pretty frustrating first year because not only was he my first police dog, he was my first dog.
Yeah.
I mean, not including Chester when I was 9.
Yeah.
This is my first dog. And so I had a lot to learn. He had a lot to learn and I had a lot to learn. And we made a lot of mistakes. And so that first year was really frustrating. But once we got over those hurdles and once I started understanding how to convey ideas to the dog, then I could start petting or playing. We didn't play a lot just because I was just trying to teach him how to be a police dog.
Sure.
So once we started building that relationship, then the bond started with just becoming he became my friend because it became time to come with me in the car, and he just became a part of who I was. And learning that he was just goofy. He's a silly dog, and he would much prefer to play than he would to do police work. And so once I started to understand more about his personality, then it was easy to become for that bond to grow.
Yeah. Does that come out then when he's at home, like with your kids?
Yeah, well, yes and no. He's an outdoor dog. He doesn't live in the house.
Okay.
Our policy is, and most in the Pacific Northwest, our policy is the dogs don't live in the house. When dogs are in the house, we want them to know that if they're in a house, they're working. So we don't want them to get comfortable sitting on a couch or, watching TV or sitting on a dog bed. If they're in the house, they're looking for a person. And they're not a pet. And we don't want them to, we want them to be friendly enough that I don't have to worry about him, snapping at somebody while we're walking down the street. But I also don't want him comfortable enough to know, to go up to people to get pet.
Sure.
And so he lives outside in the garage if it's too hot or too cold, but mostly he lives outside. So he didn't really interact with my family a lot. My kids are grown now. They're all out of the house. And so it's just my wife and I in the house. They've built up enough relationship with him that they trust him. That none of them are, he doesn't have the same bond with any of them, but they trust him. So if I say, like, if I'm going to be gone for 3 or 4 days, I can have my family watch him. And they know that they can let him out and he's not going to bite people. He's not going to bite them.
Yeah.
They can let him out, they can feed him, and they can put him away. But he's not a cuddly dog. So
the Malinois, what's the nickname? The fur missile.
Fur
right?
missile.
Yeah, right.
Maligator is one of my favorites. But so he's not a cuddly dog. but the family trusts him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that's a misnomer, right? I mean, I think a lot of people see the dogs and they think of them as pets, but that's not the case when it comes to police canines.
Yeah, no, exactly. I have to explain to people that see that I have an outdoor kennel for him, or that I have a garage crate for him, that he's content.
Sure,
He's content living there.
Yeah.
And he's a tool. He's not a pet.
He's got a mission.
He's a department owned tool that just happens to have fur and paws, but he has a job to do.
That's right. Yep.
And he doesn't get to have toys. He doesn't get to my particular dog he doesn't get a fluffy bed because he destroys it. So but he doesn't have all the toys and features that a pet would have. He's a tool.
Right.
So what motivates him? Is it food motivated?
He's
or
actually toy driven. Yeah,
okay.
he's toy driven. Despite what my Instagram account would show you, that he loves food. He absolutely loves food, but he's toy driven. One of the first times when I was training him and we were teaching him to alert on human odor, it was one of the first times out in just a parking lot where I let him go alert on a box, or to go search a box that a human was hiding in. And when he alerted on that box, he got his reward, which at the time was just a tennis ball, and he ran away. And so it took me probably 25 minutes to get him back. And as soon as I got him back, my trainer said, "All right, let's do it again." And I said, "He just ran away. It just took me 25 minutes to get him back." And the trainer said, "Well, that's up to you to figure out how to get him back."
Yeah.
And it took several trainings to figure out it was a squeaky toy. Anything that squeaks is it's his favorite thing in the world. So I have a squeaky toy. It's embarrassing as a police officer and to go to training, or even in the real world. I remember one of the first SWAT encounters we had, and he captured a guy hiding under a bed, and I had to call him back to me. I'm with a bunch of SWAT guys, and I just pull out the little toy. And it's that's what brings him back to me, because that's what he wants. So he absolutely he's very toy driven.
Sure.
Well, I think that's one of Murphy's laws. If it looks stupid but it works, it isn't stupid.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, we're thankful for you, man, and everything that you're doing. Just the mission and the things you face, and you're a blessing to so many people that I think at times we don't even realize how much of a blessing
Thank you.
that you are. So you've been serving now, Sergeant, for 20 years. We Chaplain Scott and I run into a lot of soldiers and airmen that desire to serve in that field. They ask a lot of questions about law enforcement, and there is that crossover, paramilitary, military, and so we get a lot of questions and a lot of desire from some of these young men and women. Thinking in, kind of from your career perspective, what are some of those lessons you've learned that you could maybe share with some of those young military service members who are looking to maybe get into that career?
So the thing I tell people, I tell my kids, I've been telling my kids this for years, and I try not to sound condescending, but it's really just the number one thing is to just make good decisions in life. If you make good decisions, then you set yourself up for the opportunities in the future, for good opportunities in the future. And so just making good decisions is the key. But also following your passions and pursuing your passions. A lot of people think that, the military is a great place to learn skills and get experiences, like you said, that apply to law enforcement. But I think even the military has opportunity to pursue particular passions, to pursue your passions, and then outside of the military to pursue your passions. You don't have to graduate high school and go into college to get a criminal justice degree. It's just not necessary. You can, you absolutely can do that if that's the route you want to go to get in law enforcement. But we take all sorts of people, and we have places in law enforcement. And in Washington County is it's the third largest agency in the state of Oregon. It's the second most populous county. So we have a lot of options. We have a lot of special teams, and we have a lot of collateral duties. And so we love people that bring their own experiences to us. We don't need people who grew up with military dads or with police, enforcement in their family. So whatever people are passionate about, we'll teach you all the law enforcement stuff. We'll teach you how to shoot guns and the laws and how to drive and all that kind of stuff. So, but we love when people bring their passions to us. It could be silly, like math. Like maybe you're a math whiz and you love math. Well, we've got places for that. We've got places where that's appropriate. Like me, you could I didn't like dogs, but maybe you come into it loving animals. That we've got places for people who love animals. People like to ride motorcycles. We've got options for that. So I just suggest that people follow what makes them passionate.
Yeah, that's great. No,
We embrace that in the National Guard too, with in the reserve components as compared to the active duty, because most of the men and women that serve in the Guard are not in a military uniform full time. So they bring a lot of different skills and attributes and different perspectives, and just having that diversity of thought and diversity of approach can be a really powerful
and all those skill sets too, that varying skill sets and natural gifts and talents, and all those things contribute to a diverse force.
Yes.
And I know we think highly of that. That's definitely a blessing for us too.
We work with a couple of reserve, probably more than I can think of that I know of, but specifically a couple that I know of. The current team leader for our SWAT team is in the reserve, and one of we have an airplane for the sheriff's office, and our pilots are reserve. So
nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Good.
Well, so one of the key distinctives of the National Guard is our role in supporting domestic operations. And so local law enforcement agencies are some of our key partners for training in response to emergencies or natural disasters. And something I didn't know until I'd already been in the Guard for a while, we have National Guard soldiers and airmen who work counter-drug operations with local law enforcement agencies. Have you worked or trained with the Oregon Guard before?
We've trained with them. My SWAT team has trained with them. And for that purpose, if we haven't found yet the nexus, the drug nexus to actually partner with them on a live operation. But we have found that ability to train with them. And we had a good time. I believe the base was down in Salem or near Salem. We went and we flew in the Lakotas, and it was just our opportunity to learn how to get in, strap in, learn about weight distribution and just about how to safely climb in and climb out. But as for me and my partner, my other one of the canine partners, we got to put the dogs on and off. And so we got to jump on the Lakotas with the dogs and get off the Lakotas with the dogs. We basically just took off, flew around and landed for hours, just repeatedly getting on the helicopters and getting off the helicopters. So we had a blast. For us, it was, it was good training. We learned a lot, but we haven't had the opportunity to partner for a live operation.
How'd Radar do on the helicopter?
He's great. Once he's on the helicopter, once he's on, the overpressure of walking under the rotors really bothers him. And so the first 5 or 6 times we did just fine. He hesitated a little bit as soon as we got under the rotors. He knew that jumping into the helicopter would eliminate most of that overpressure. So he was good getting into it. Once we were on it, he was great. Wanted to look out the windows. And, dogs aren't the smartest, so we had to keep him on the leash to make sure he didn't jump out. But he had a good time. But by the time we had done it 9 or 10 times, I had to carry him. He wouldn't walk. He wouldn't voluntarily get onto the helicopter anymore.
I've seen that before.
We laugh, and Shane saw this too, because when Finnegan was with me in Afghanistan, he was fine if helicopters were flying around or even taxiing. We were at the Kabul International Airport, and he'd been what's the right word? They'd had him around helicopters to desensitize. So he'd been around helicopters before, but as soon as we'd start to walk up, it was usually a Chinook, and they've got the exhaust coming out the back. As soon as he felt the exhaust and he knew we were getting on, he would put the brakes on. And so there's some great pictures of me carrying a 75-pound lab on the back of a helicopter. And then once he's on, he'd sit down. He was good, but then he also learned too. As soon as he'd hear all the seatbelts click off and the ramp was down, he was ready to leave.
He's ready to go.
We have a Chinook experience as well, but when we were learning about the Chinook and we were going for a ride, the Chinook was quiet. It wasn't on yet. So we got to walk up the ramp and take our seat before they turned it on.
Okay.
But as soon as they turned it on and he heard it whining,
Oh yeah.
the Chinooks have those bubble windows, and he was over my shoulder trying to get out that bubble window. And as soon as we took off, I think we went for, we were out at Camp Rylea, and they just took off and took us around the coast a little bit. And I think it was about a 45-minute ride. But as soon as we got in the air, Radar just evacuated his bowels on the floor of the Chinook. And it just ruined the flight for everybody. and as soon as we landed, I was like, all right, I'm going to go put him up, and I'm going to come running back and clean it up. And I realized that they didn't have time. So we just got off the helicopter and they flew away. And I felt so bad because he just left it all over the floor of the Chinook.
Right.
So we're not allowed in helicopters anymore.
Oh, I'm sure they'd love to see your Radar.
Yeah.
See if we'd make that happen. So maybe we'll shift gears a little bit, because we really, one of the big things that we talk about and try to share with our soldiers and airmen is resiliency, and how people build and develop resiliency. And physical fitness is an obviously important part of serving in the military and law enforcement too. Can you talk about maybe your understanding of holistic health and fitness, where physical fitness fits, and what else do you do to stay fit for duty?
So having been in this for 20 years, my understanding has evolved a lot, because when I first started, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on holistic health.
Right.
And it was
not in the military either.
Yeah, I bet. It was just come to work. A lot of us new guys working graveyard, working overnight, working overtime, and the allure of being able to work overtime and make more money. It was just come to work and work as much as you can, go home and recover however you recover, which ends up being alcohol for a lot of people, and come back to work. And so over the years, we've realized that fitness, mentally fit and physically fit, keeping people healthy, it's not just good for them and good for their families. It's good for the sheriff's office. It's good for law enforcement. And so the important, it's become much more important. And some people do a better job of seeking that out. And I ended up turning strictly to physical fitness, was really where I went. Not really mental fitness. Until probably about 10 years ago, I started realizing that expanding my mind was very helpful. But I turned to physical fitness. I run a lot. Have never really been a huge into lifting weights. I started building my own gym last year so that I could start lifting weights as well. Just understanding the importance of being physically and mentally strong. So I've always, it's always been running for me, but I started learning that I lived inside of this little bubble, this law enforcement bubble, or inside, well, I had a couple of bubbles that I lived inside. I lived inside this law enforcement bubble, but I also lived inside this Christian church bubble. And so I sort of had this echo chamber that I lived in. And so it was easy to stay in there and just feel like that was the place that made me feel comfortable. So actually getting outside of my comfort zone and talking with people who had different beliefs and finding people who had different lifestyles than me, to learn and understand that maybe I didn't have all the answers. And we've started making that important, or we've started trying to let officers know that that's important, that mental resiliency as well as physical resiliency is what's going to keep you healthy, physically and mentally healthy, for an entire career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts too. And Shane, you can weigh in, but then having that healthy spiritual, mental, and emotional core to handle what you deal with on a daily, a frequent basis in law enforcement.
Yeah, it's easy to get discouraged, doing what I do, because most of what we see is we see people on at their worst times and at their worst moments, not just the person committing the crime, but the person who's had a crime committed against them is also having a terrible day and they're not at their best. And so it's easy to be discouraged, and it's easy to go home and start to think that that's how everyone is all the time. And if you don't put yourself in a position to see people at their best, or to read people about people while they're at their best, it's easy to get discouraged. So for me, like we talked about, I'm a big runner. The running community for me, just the community itself, the running is great. I enjoy running. I like the physical challenge of running, and about pushing myself to run further or to run faster or whatever. I enjoy that, for me, the challenge. But the community is different than anything else that I'm a part of. It's just such a welcoming, loving, positive community that for me is a place that I can go to be revived and to find hope. So we encourage people to find that sort of a community outside of law enforcement, because we even with law enforcement, we're positive. We can be positive people, but if it's 5 or 6 of us getting together, we're gonna start talking about work, and we're gonna talk. It's healthy. I think it's a healthy environment. You have to be able to let off some steam, and that's a good place to let some steam off. But in letting that steam off with those buddies you're hanging out with, we're not really uplifting.
It can turn dark. It can turn dark.
It can turn dark pretty fast. So we encourage people to find something outside of law enforcement and outside of that bubble to find hope.
Right.
Now, when you run, some people talk about, contemplating the meaning of life and deep thoughts and more philosophical thoughts while they're running. I'm just thinking about breathing and how my feet are. I mean,
I can think. I get thoughts. I solve problems often. I solve my own problems generally when I'm out running, but I try to occupy my brain when I'm running, just so that it doesn't hurt. Because I'm usually trying to push myself in some fashion. Either I'm running faster than I want to run, or I'm running further than I want to run, and so something hurts. And we're
at that age too.
Probably sometimes that too. So I try to occupy my mind. I'm not a silent runner. I can't run with nothing in my ears. So I like to listen to books generally. But I like to listen to fiction, because I find myself when I'm listening to nonfiction, or if I'm listening to a podcast, I sort of have to pay attention to understand the process. But if I'm listening to fiction, if I realize I haven't been paying attention for a minute or two, I still understand the story, and I haven't missed anything. So I'm a fiction book podcast, or fiction book runner.
Okay. Oh, very cool. That brings up a debate that I've enjoyed having with people for a while. If you listen to a book,
I consider it reading. I know where you're going.
Okay,
I know where you're going with that. I consider it reading a book.
I do too, for the record.
Yes, there are definitely benefits to seeing words on a page. I think there are. It's better for understanding syntax and vocabulary and for learning things. But I'm not that picky. If you want to say you read a book, if you listen to it, I'm fine. That's what I say.
I think so too. Yeah, and people absorb information in so many different ways.
Sure.
Well, and I heard that you qualified to run the Boston Marathon again this year. So that's quite an achievement. Tell us about that process.
Well, so when I started running, really when I joined the patrol in 2008, just to get healthy and to stay healthy. And I'm the type of person that doesn't like to see that someone else can do a physical activity that I can't. And just by nature of my size, there are a lot of things that I can't do that other people can do physically, but I can run. And I realized I could run. And so I started running 5Ks, which is, where a lot of people start. And I go to the 5K and I realized that there are some people running 10Ks. So I was like, I guess I could run a 10K. If that guy can run a 10K, I could run a 10K. Then I find out there's running half marathons. And then, it's not like I'd never heard of a marathon, but when I see people running the marathon, I think, I could run the marathon. And so I start running marathons. And then I realize that there are, even in the running community, even running marathons, there are other goals. There's goals that not just finishing a marathon, but there's, there's the elusive Boston qualifying time, and it seems to be it seems to be everyone's calling it a BQ, and I want to know what a BQ is, and then I find out it means you ran a time that qualifies you to register for the Boston Marathon. And so I thought, well, you know what, I can do that. So in 2016 was my first marathon, the Portland Marathon. And I set a goal before I even ran that marathon. Before I ran my first marathon, I said, I bet I can qualify for the Boston Marathon within 5 years. And so it took me just under 4. So in just under 4 years, I'd qualified for the marathon. So
yeah, that's impressive. Well, so that'll be coming up in April. What was the experience like that first time?
The first time was unique. It's a very unique marathon just among marathons because it has a lot of the start. It's a point-to-point course, and you have to bust out to the starting line hours, like 3 or 4 hours before the marathon starts, and they've got a village that you hang out in. So it's just the whole process was filled me with anxiety because I'd never experienced it, and so but I had a great time. My wife is is very supportive. She's not a runner, but she travels with me to run. We travel a lot just so I can go run somewhere, but we usually pick somewhere that was also interesting for her to visit. So
sure.
we spent I think we were there for 5 or 6 days, and we spent 3 or 4 days before the marathon just being tourists. So I must have walked, 15 miles just around the city before we even went to the marathon. But she'll go to the expos with me and some of the stores with me, and she supports me by going to the stuff that she doesn't think is very interesting, but she hangs out with me. We have a good time. So it was the whole experience was a blast, enough that I want to go do it again.
Yeah, my wife has been dragged along to those expos and things like that too. A couple years in, she said, "I didn't think running could be so expensive."
Yeah. Yes.
But we were talking about something before we started recording, and with respect to physical fitness, and you made the point that simplicity and consistency go a long way. I mean, that's true of running. You can make running pretty complicated,
sure.
But we used to say in the Army, look, there's no secret to the PT test. You just do a lot of push-ups, do a lot of sit-ups, and run really fast. And the only way to get better at running is to run. You can make it complicated, but simplicity and consistency go a long way.
Yeah.
Shane, you had a question about, because we talk about, well, in the military, we've got 5 pillars of resiliency, the physical, the spiritual, emotional, but then there's also the social and the family, and you touched on kind of the social part of running too. But Shane, you had a great question about family resiliency and kind of how that can help us.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on it. It was actually really good. These are healthy coping mechanisms, right? Running and being with family and spending time with, you kind of alluded to it, spending time with those that are not in law enforcement is always super healthy. Because you're right, it goes right back to war stories, and then pretty soon you're talking about some caper that happened way back when. And so being around people that whether they're from a social group or the running team, the running group, anything outside of work is always healthy too. But I was just kind of curious for your family fitness or your family resiliency and your spiritual resiliency. What do you do personally that some young law enforcement officer or even a military person could hear you say today that might help them in their careers? So
for us, it's just spending time together. Yep. And I've been in the career long enough that I have made major changes in how I spend time with my family.
Sure.
And I made a lot of mistakes when I first started. And my kids weren't quite as young as a lot of the new officers are. I mean, I guess they were pretty young. They're 20. So I've been in the 20. My youngest is 20. So she had just been born. And so they were pretty young. But I spent a lot of time thinking that my job was to just make the money and go to work and make the money. And my wife's job was to take the kids to practice or to take the kids to their games, take the kids to this and that. And I missed a lot of my family's activities when they were young because I was working and because I had put work as a higher priority than my family. And I've spent the last probably I estimate probably 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years trying to fix that. And thankfully, my wife was so good with the kids that I didn't ruin them.
Sure.
I don't have
Right.
as good a relationship with them as I wish I did. But I've been making a big effort to change that
Sure.
and to show them how important they are to me. But that's what it was. It was spending time, spending time with them, doing things that they enjoy doing. It was easy to do things that I enjoy doing because I look back. We did if you scroll through my Facebook photos or whatever, you can see us doing a lot of stuff. But it's always stuff that I wanted to do. Right. It's like, oh, look, you guys went hiking and you guys, oh, look, you went to this waterfall and you do that. And it's all, it's great, but it was all me. Like I wanted to go hiking. So I brought my kids and I wanted to go hiking. So I took my wife or camping or whatever. So, but it's just about finding out what is important to them and doing that with them. But it's just spending time.
Sure.
It's time. It's time. It's so easy to get carried away with work. Law enforcement will take what you give it.
You'll say the exact same thing in the Army.
It'll take what you give it. If you give exactly what they're asking for, then they'll take it. If you want to give 20% more, they'll take it. They'll take 100% of what you were willing to give them. And most of the time, unless you find someone who's recognizes that you are more involved than you should be at work, no one's going to notice.
Sure.
Right.
No one notices. Right. So it's up to you. And now this is me like 10, 12 years ago. Now we do a better job of recognizing that people are spending too much time at work or they're not devoting enough time to activities outside of work. So that's actually one of the things that I enjoy most about my position as a sergeant. At the sheriff's office, the sergeant's I'm a patrol supervisor, so I'm a frontline supervisor. So I'm the highest rank that still works in a patrol car and still works out in the patrol in patrol. As soon as you promote up to lieutenant and any higher, you work in the office now, and so you just sort of naturally become detached. And so one of the reasons I love my position the most is because I have the most influence. My rank has the most influence at the sheriff's office. And I have the most contact with the most people at the sheriff's office. And so I get to see that.
Sure.
I get to see who's spending a ton of time here, who's getting here way earlier than they should be and staying way later than they should. Right. And even talking with I supervise patrol, but I also have my K-9 team. I'm also the K-9 team supervisor. So I'm really close with these guys. And those are the ones that I'm most responsible for. And it's been very important to me that they spend time with their families and that when we come to work, we're not just talking about work. They're telling us about this time that they spent with their kids. What did you get to do with your wife this week? And so we share stories about our families I think it's really important.
Right.
Absolutely.
No, that's
Absolutely.
huge. Yeah,
100%.
That's huge.
Well, we've got a lot of folks in the military who are fans of the work that you and Radar do on social media. So I'd hear it if I didn't ask you some questions about Radar and your work too. The Sergeant or First Sergeant Holden was talking about this too. The formula is really effective and really positive too. So it's no surprise that it resonates with people. So some questions for Radar. You rate every snack. And so, well, first of all, I guess if any of our listeners haven't gone on Instagram or one of the other platforms and seen you guys, they need to check it out. But you rate every snack for the crunch, the drool factor, et cetera. What's the highest rated snack that you've tried?
I think it was a burrito. We had when we're on a SWAT operation or really any operation where we don't get to leave and the sheriff's office will provide some food for us. Someone went to a local Mexican food place and got some really good burritos. And so Radar and I shared a burrito, and he was taking burrito right out of my mouth. I think that was the highest. The rankings are a little arbitrary. I mean, they're not completely arbitrary, but for the most part,
well, I think that's great.
The rankings are a little bit arbitrary,
right?
But they're fun, and they sort of mimic, how much Radar I appeared to enjoy the snack. Yeah. But the numbers don't really mean a ton. But anything, it's usually any hot food for him. I mean, he loves opening a bag of chips and eating some chips or, whatever. But anytime I get hot food like French fries or a burger or something straight from a restaurant, that he goes ballistic.
I wonder if the smell maybe.
Oh yeah, well the smell
that.
he can I can hear him whining before I even get in the car. He knows that's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also knows
great.
the sound of like any dog. He knows the sound of a bag of chips opening or
Sure.
something like that. But
Yeah. Is his reward for a bust always a McDonald's cheeseburger?
It's always a burger.
A burger.
Yeah,
Okay.
it kind of just depends on where we go. I've only filmed the cheeseburger. The McDonald's burger was the only one I've done of filming a cap. I call it a capture burger. He gets a capture burger.
That's awesome. And then I know he doesn't like peeled bananas, which is crazy because my dog, he knows the routine. As soon as I walk to that part of the kitchen, he's honed in on it. Although I have seen Radar eat a salad. Is there anything else that Radar won't eat?
Not yet. No, he'll eat banana now too. Even peeled. He's still. I sort of have to break off a piece and hand it to him.
Yeah.
He hasn't yet just taken a bite of a full peeled banana. He has taken a bite of a banana that's with a peel. For some reason, he's okay with taking a bite of a banana with a peel on it.
Oh yeah, I've seen my dog eat brown banana peels off the street. So
Oh yeah, mine
So-
they'll eat-
But we
they'll
haven't.
eat
I haven't found anything yet. Everything I've offered him, he's eaten.
nice.
then, so one of our public affairs guys asked, "Is there a lot of editing that goes into it, or do you use an app?"
No editing for for the snacks. We've done other videos where I've edited some stuff where we'll try to, I did one where it looked like I took a pair of sunglasses off and threw them up in the air, and then all of a sudden he pops up wearing the sunglasses. That was a bunch of editing. So there's once in a while there's some stuff with editing, but for the most part, the snack that we take, I just turn the camera on, I open the door, we eat a snack. And I close the cage about 90 seconds later. There have been maybe 5 or 6 times where I've started over because I physically couldn't open the snack.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't interesting to watch me struggle to open a bag.
Right.
So
Yeah,
right.
no
Yeah,
editing,
that's
but
not
I have
exactly
definitely
correct.
I've definitely started over.
No, that's fair. Then, do you choose all your own music? You've given me some earworms over the last few months.
Yes, I choose the music. I'm not the most. I've never been a huge fan of music. I like music. I mean, I enjoy it, but I don't know what all these songs are. It's just that Instagram has an algorithm that's just absolutely perfect for picking music, and they make it very easy. And so I generally, if I don't have an idea of a song in my head already, sometimes I'll get an idea of a song to use just by scrolling through social media. But generally what I do is based on the snack I have, I'll throw some keywords into Instagram and it'll just give me a slew of options. And I'll pick them. And we were talking about earlier about the simplicity of the videos and the consistency of them. I try to pair songs that have some sort of a beat drop, that when I open the gate and he pops his head out, that the song, the beat changes at that moment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't recognize it,
Oh,
but
it's
it's
super
something
big.
that you
Oh, yeah,
can,
I've seen it. Yeah.
It's something that once it's pointed out to you, it's
Yep.
like, oh, okay, I see that and I hear it now. But if you're not paying attention, it's just subconsciously, it's just an attractive thing to hear or to see. So
Yeah, I think I first noticed it with Christmas with Run DMC.
Yeah.
that was perfect. That was perfect. Well, so we know Radar likes to eat, and well, we know soldiers do too, but we don't always have a whole lot of choice in food options. So, well, and it's not the brown bag that you usually see.
Okay.
But true story. I went in my garage and looked at my deployment boxes for an MRE, and this was the only one I could find. It was in my go bag. So we'll see. This is and the names are great. Rib-shaped barbecue flavor pork patty with caramel powder and smoke flavor added. So just don't look at the ingredients.
That sounds perfect.
And there's probably something else you can find in there for
At least
Radar.
it's not a veggie.
That sounds absolutely perfect.
It's not a veggie omelet. That's what you don't.
Oh,
Okay,
those were
I don't
those were
want
awful.
Well, this sounds
Oh,
absolutely
those-
perfect. I guarantee he's going to eat it and he's going to love it, and I will also try it.
That's great.
There's probably something for both of you in there.
That's great.
All right. Well, so you touched on this a little bit already too. We like to use the expression that leaders are readers. So I'm always curious if there are any particular books that you've listened to recently or podcasts that you listen to or follow that you would recommend or share broadly.
So I wish I was more of a reader. I know the importance of it. I listen to a lot of books, mostly Stephen King. And so I don't know if you can throw that in the
That's
leadership column, but but I think one of the, for me, when the point where I made the transition of starting to understand, starting to understand how important it was for me to pay attention to my resilience was, there's a guy, Kevin Gilmartin's book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, was really good. And that sort of set me on a path for actually putting it in my mind to think about how important it was. And one of the best things about that book is it's also a good book for family to read. So officers read it, and then we hand it to our wives or our spouses and say, all right, I need you to read this too, because it explains a lot of what I'm going to go through that I can't necessarily explain to you.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement was really good.
Yep.
I'm reading, I just started reading Jocko Willink's new leadership book. I don't have a lot to say about it yet because I just started reading
Extreme
it.
Ownership?
Yeah. Extreme Leadership. It's something, the leadership, there's leadership in the title. I apologize. I can't remember the name of the book, but his new book on leadership. So one of my team commanders just handed it to me recently. So I'm reading it right now.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything to say on it just
That's
yet.
all right. That's all right. The people, because I, share thoughts at the beginning of meetings and stuff all the time. So people around me know that I'm a big Jocko fan.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. Well, and then Simon Sinek, a motivational speaker, and his book, Start With Why.
Yep.
Was really good. And I recommend that to, law enforcement and then anyone outside of law enforcement, just to focus you on why, what is your reason? What is your motivation? Because your motivation for why you're doing what you're doing is going to lead you to what you're passionate about and where your passions lie. And so we talk about that all the time at the sheriff's office and in canine work. And it's like, why are you here? Why do you want to do this? That's the foundation. Yeah. The foundation is why. And so that's something that I pay attention to as a supervisor and as it's supervisor, like a sergeant, I'm a leader in name, but I'm also, a leader by nature. And so I enjoy helping people understand that it really goes a long way to understand what your motivation is for why you want to do something or why you want to be somewhere.
Yeah, and I love that book too, and talk about that a lot in the military and helping the people around you see the purpose and meaning in what they do. Because I'm sure law enforcement is the same way. There's a lot of stuff we do in the military that's just it's not fun. It can be very boring sometimes, and it'll take you away from your loved ones for long stretches. But if you understand your why. Even if a soldier just finds himself sweeping the floor in the armory after a drill weekend, that's not very exciting. But if there's a better understanding of the purpose and meaning for what they're doing in uniform, why they're wearing the uniform to begin with, and what that flag on your shoulder stands for, then people can embrace even those other more mundane moments. Shane, any follow-ups?
No, I think it's great. I think. We're thankful for those of you that have stepped up and answered the call to be out there and taken it a step further, right, to test and get in shape and test for these specialized units and spend time with the dog and your family as well. And oftentimes the families get sometimes kind of placed over here. They are the backbone, right? Yeah. The wife and the kids and those that support you. And it's the same in the military. They focus so much on those of us, they go down range and in different assignments and those kind of things. But man, our wives and our significant others, our partners, our kids, they're huge. They play a huge role. Yeah. And so I'm thankful that you're out there, man. I'm thankful for you and what you do.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And keep up the great work. And I'm excited to kind of see what the next step is in this interview with Radar. So
yeah, Eamon, thanks so much for spending time with us today and just echoing what Shane said, grateful for you and the people that you work with and serve with. So God bless you and your family and everything that you do to keep our communities safe. And you and Radar too, the time you're putting in to share a little bit of joy with the world as well.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And now, let's go out and meet Radar and maybe
go meet Radar.
Maybe feed him.
He'll take it.
You guys ready? We're going. So he's gonna, when he pops out, he's probably gonna say hi to you, but he's gonna be so focused on the food that it might not even matter that you're there. All right. So we're filming. Got to show. I guess guys will probably understand what this is. Some will, right?
It doesn't have the distinctive brown bag, but they should.
Hopefully they can read that. Open it up. Get this guy out. Hi. Okay. Show it. Rib shaped. He doesn't care. Hold on, I get some. Oh, come on, man. He gets so focused on the food. All right. Nah. That's all right. No, it's mine.
And heating them up usually does make them taste a little more palatable.
That's it, buddy. That's all you got. Time's up. Time's up. Thank you.
That's awesome. This podcast is produced by the Oregon National Guard Public Affairs Office. My prayer for you is that wherever you find yourself, that you might find hope for today and strength for the ambiguity and chaos of life. Blessings on the rest of your day.